Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome to our webinar on agricultural plastics recycling. We're excited to have you join us today and learn more about the world of agricultural plastics. So I have a few just admin items and I'll go over the agenda and then we'll dive in. First off, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. Many of us are coming into this presentation from locations across Canada, and we would just like to acknowledge that for the Alberta Plastics Recycling Association and those of us here in Alberta, we are on the territories of those who have lived here and cared for these lands for generations. This includes Treaty 6, 7, and 8 territories and the Northwest Métis homeland. This land acknowledgement is an act of reconciliation and gratitude, recognizing the ongoing contributions of Indigenous peoples to this province. So thank you for that. We do have a competition statement that we use to start all of our meetings at APRA, just stating that we don't talk about competitive or business information. We also have just a brief statement here that all of this information is provided in good faith, and we hope you enjoy the presentation. So today we have a number of presenters here to tell you a little bit more about the projects and programs that they are working on in the field of agricultural plastics recycling. So for to start the pilot or the webinar, I will talk a little bit about an overview of our association just to give you an idea of who we are and what we do. We'll then jump into an update about the Alberta Agricultural Plastics Pilot for grain bags and twine. My colleagues Osser and Jen will be joining on that. And then Davin will be presenting on a national update from Clean Farms, followed by some recycling industry updates from Benson from Curtis Limited and Daryl from Merlin Plastics. We'll then hear from Dawn McKenzie talking about recycled content products in agricultural plastics packaging, and bottle-to-bottle update from Shane from Clean Farms, followed by a Q&A. Just a reminder that you can post your Q&A or questions in either the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. It's a little box with a question mark, or we're also happy to use the chat and take questions that way. If you have kind of shorter questions or things like acronyms and things like that, we'll try to clarify those as much as possible, as we do tend to talk in alphabet soup sometimes in the industry. So just briefly before we get into the topic of the agricultural plastics, and for those of you who aren't familiar with APRA, I just wanted to give you a really brief overview of who we are. We facilitate partnerships and programs to advance circularity across the plastics value chain in Alberta. So our members are resin manufacturers, recyclers, processors, academic institutions, and we try to just make as many connections across that value chain as we can. And so we're really happy to bring together groups. We work on programs, advocacy, and projects that advance plastics recycling and circularity. And this agricultural plastics project has been one that's been really at a passion project for us, and seeing the thousands of tons of materials be able to be recycled instead of burned or landfilled. So we're really excited to share more with you today. We just launched our 2026 to 2028 strategic plan. I'd invite you to take a look at that on our website. And just wanted to quickly highlight some of the faces, many of which you'll hear from today, that are presenting in their own work in this field. And thank our sponsors as well for their support throughout the year. And just again, to highlight, if you are interested in any more information about our association, membership, or any other information, please feel free to visit our website, and be sure to check out Alberta Circular Plastics Day. It's a one-day conference that we will be hosting at the University of Calgary on March 11th. Now, with that, I would like to invite Osser, who is the chair of the Agricultural Plastics Recycling Group, to join us and to give us an update on the pilot, and then Jen and I will also participate in this portion of the presentation. Osser, over to you.
Thanks, Tammy. Yeah, my name is Osser Grindy. I'm a cow-calf producer in central Alberta, and I'm the Alberta beef producer representative on the Ag Plastics Recycling Group. So how I came into this file was about 2015. Our regional landfill that I took my plastics to stopped accepting agricultural plastics. They were having problems with it impeding the cycling and circulation in their landfill cells. So they said deal with it on farm, and a lot of farmers were burning it, or burning it on their own farm, and I just don't like burning things on my property. So I started stockpiling it, but after a few years it really started building up, and I said there has to be a better way of dealing with this. So I had a resolution passed at a fall producer meeting, at a beef producer meeting, and it was passed there and then passed at our AGM. And at around the same time, a lot of other commodity groups in the province of Alberta were having similar concerns and passed similar resolutions, as did the ag fieldmen and some municipalities. So we got together and said we actually need to form an official group, and that's where the Ag Plastics Recycling Group came from. So we have representatives from academia, the government of Alberta, municipal government, some waste commissions. Most of the commodity groups in the province are represented, as well as recyclers, nonprofits, and some retailers and manufacturers. Next slide. So this is just a good timeline to show where we came from to where we are today. So around 2016, that's when the concerns were percolating. 2017, we came together and formed the APRG. Through 2018, we did a lot of background fact finding. So we had presentations from jurisdictions around the world, including Ireland, New Zealand, a few American states, and some provinces in Canada on how they were dealing with their ag plastics. And we also had presentations from experts on different models, EPR, stewardship, and things like that. After that, the APRG came up with a set of guiding principles that all our members agreed to. And then we said, really, we need to start a pilot project in Alberta to look at specific barriers, costs, logistics, things like that in Alberta on farm. And so we put a grant proposal together and submitted it to the government of Alberta in late 2018. It was approved very quickly, actually. In early 2019, we got the funds. Originally, it was for a 3-year pilot project for twine and grain bags. Through that summer, through an open tender process, we hired Clean Farms as the program operator, and we designed the program with them, and then they rolled it out in 2019 in the fall. And since then, we've been expanding the scope and the geographic reach of the program. So next slide, Tammy. And this is our boilerplate we say on every presentation. So the pilot is funded by the government of Alberta. It's administered by Alberta beef producers. The oversight is provided by the Ag Plastics Recycling Group, and Clean Farms does all the day-to-day operations. I'll turn it over to Jen.
Sorry about that. I could not find my unmute button. Thanks, Osser. I'm Jen Kuhl, the Executive Director of the Recycling Council of Alberta, but I also sit on the executive of the Alberta or the Ag Plastics Recycling Group. So that's why I'm here. And going back to Osser's timeline that showed in 2019, we kickstarted the pilot. But before we did that, we did a waste characterization study to see what kind of plastics are in the ag waste stream and how much. And so the study and the slide both show that grain bags, plus silage bags, and twine were the biggest types and volumes of plastics in the ag waste stream. However, since just the grain bags and twine had end markets, they were the ones that were chosen to be part of the pilot project. Because in a recycling world, having an end market for collected materials is critical. Otherwise, it's just an exercise in collecting sorted materials. So because both the volumes and the ability to have an end market for recycling them, grain bags and twine were chosen for the pilot. Next slide. So also critical for success is a robust set of collection partners. Here is a list, and it's really hard to see, but if you look at the rainbow on the side, the green members on that list were the first group of collection partners that we had. And we've grown from that first group, the green group of 21, we've grown all the way to 53 partners today. So if there's any of you on the list out there, we thank you and we want to recognize you. And we've been growing in number, so from 21 to 53, but we've also been growing in terms of geographical area serviced in Alberta. So that's what this map is showing. So we've grown from that 53 to, or with that 53, we've grown to 173 collection sites, because not every site collects all of the commodities. So to collect only grain bags, 119 twine only, and then we have 52 that collect both twine and grain bags. And it's especially great to see the organic expansion of the programs in numbers and in geographical reach, because being a collection partner and participating in this program in any way is all still voluntary. Collection partners do, though, receive compensation. They receive $55 per ton of acceptable materials collected at their sites. And we've done the math and we figured this works out to about $11 per grain bag. And then there's also avoided costs to the municipalities if they are the ones that own the landfill, as it helps to prolong the life of the landfill by diverting this to a better source. And we've also done a bit of estimation math on that, and we figure it could save around $100 worth of airspace in the landfill per grain bag by recycling them. So there's real advantage there. And then there's also additional compensation for those with grain bag rollers, because the rolled bags, make it much easier to handle all along the whole logistics chain. So yeah, those guys get an uptick. And so just how much has the pilot program collected to date? We're happy to say that the pilot program has been able to keep more than 18 square kilometers of plastic waste out of landfills, which, is hard to imagine what that would look like. But we figure that would cover about 7 sections of land if all the grain bags were laid out flat, which is also a crazy big amount. And if you think more in terms of semi-trailer loads, we figure that would be about 260 semi-trailers worth of plastics that have been collected and diverted. And then on the twine side, we've collected less, but we still estimated that we've avoided 39 full semi-trailers worth from going to the landfill. And we have 2 main sources of the twine. The collection partners, as we've talked about, those 44% municipal sites, and then we get about 56% from hay processors across the province.
All right, I think Jen, you're passing this piece back to me.
Yeah. Passing it to
Jen. Yeah, thank you. And so just to kind of conclude and wind up our presentation, I have a few slides just on next steps, as well as some of the exciting things we wanted to highlight, the Great Twine Roundup being one of them. We had our inaugural year last year, and just really good success in terms of collection, in terms of increasing engagement and awareness on twine collection amongst community groups, 4-H organizations, and gave away a total of 12,000 in cash prizes. And really, you can see the success in those numbers there. I think it was about a a 40 to 50% increase of what we've done in the past and previous years with twine collection. So we plan to launch this again starting in 2026, and we really do appreciate all the work that Clean Farms did on this pilot, and we just think it was such a great success to engage communities and community groups in helping create awareness about the opportunities to recycle and boots on the ground to do that work. And so really excited that we were able to make this project happen, and you will continue to hear more from us on it. So thank you very much, everyone involved in that. Just in terms of transitioning a bit, or in terms of what becomes what, when we started this pilot, one of the things that we did was set our goals in terms of outcomes for a program. And one of those things was transparency. And another one was that the material that's collected has the highest outcome on the scale of waste management, from reduction all the way down through to proper management and recycling. And so it's really important for us, rather, that we tell people how it's being processed and what it's being turned into. And so you will hear from Merlin Plastics and from Curtis Limited shortly about their work in setting up facilities here in Alberta and their processing abilities. But in short, just until we get to that point, the plastic that you saw in the pictures earlier from Jen is collected. We have 2 facilities to process grain bags here in Alberta. One is Revolution Plastics near Bashaw, that unfortunately couldn't join us today for the presentation, and Merlin Plastics, and you'll hear from Daryl shortly. And this plastic is unrolled, it's shredded and screened, then it's washed, and then it's melted back into new plastics pellets. And those are sent to be manufactured into new agricultural products. And twine is sent to recyclers right now, I believe, mainly in the US. And again, extruded back into pellets that can then be used to make car parts, flower pots, composite decking, and dimensional lumber. So it's really an economic story that drives the demand for recycling and really keeps that system going. And so it's really important that we continue to have these end markets and continue to support our recyclers. One of the things that we believe is the best way to do this is through a permanent program, and the committee has been promoting the transition from this pilot into a permanent program under extended producer responsibility, where the manufacturers or for sellers of this plastic packaging would be required to ensure the recycling outcomes are achieved, and for the grain bags and twine materials that they manufacture. And this really allows the most effective approach, we feel. Saskatchewan has had EPR since 2016 for grain bags, and Manitoba has had EPR for grain bags and twine since April 2021. So we're really trying to communicate the value of that harmonized approach with the other provinces, and really knowing that we one day will need to move the pilot from a pilot to a permanent program. This is the approach that we have been discussing. You may have heard of EPR in other contexts. Alberta launched EPR for packaging and paper products this spring, and we are hoping that the next step, or another material to be added, will be agricultural plastics. So in terms of our committee, we just continue to advocate for that permanent program. We have asked for a pilot extension. The end date was set for this December, and we've asked for an extension to 2027. We anticipate we'll be able to share news about that extension shortly, and we've also requested an expansion to try to do some trials and a pilot on bale wrap and silage plastic. Many of our members are in the dairy and feedlot industries, and we really hear a lot of comments that they're looking for solutions for their plastic, and we're hopeful to be able to share more announcements on that shortly. And we really want to continue our education and outreach to different groups, just to get more awareness about the pilot. Because I live and breathe this, I think, it's common knowledge now that we have these 173 collection sites, but I talk to people quite often that say, oh, I'd never heard of that pilot before. And so it just reiterates the need that we all have to continue to get the word out, continue to have options about the recycling and participation. And so if any of you within your organizations have newsletters that go out to members, if you have events, if you have conferences, please reach out to us. we really would love to share and hear from you. Our emails and information are here, and we can be reached online as well, aprg.ca. And of course, I think I see Davin posted some links there. Clean Farms is always also available to connect and answer your questions. And really just would like to thank all of the groups that have been involved in the APRG. It's been a real team effort, and we appreciate everyone's support to advance the pilot and to bring it to the state it's at now. So I will now end my portion of the presentation, and I will pass it over to Davin for his slides.
Gotta unmute myself. We'll start again. My name's Davin Johnson. I'm the Alberta Program Advisor with Clean Farms based out of Lethbridge, Alberta. As Tammy and Oscar and Jennifer mentioned, I'm primarily responsible for the operations of that pilot program in Alberta, as well as our other programs, but I'm going to give a national perspective of our other programs for Clean Farms. And so Clean Farms, we're a Canadian producer responsibility organization, also known as a PRO under EPR terms. So what that means is that we operate these programs on behalf of our member companies. The member companies, those are those who are obligated under an EPR regulation or who do it voluntarily. And so we basically put it together the program and operate it on behalf of the whole industry so that one individual company doesn't have to do a program parallel to another company and you're having all these different, schemes happening at the same time. So we work with Ag Plastics Recycling and Recovery. There's 8 permanent programs that we run, and then obviously pilot programs for other materials. So in Alberta with the grain bag and twine. And we operate in both French and English. So Clean Farms for English and Agri Coupe for French. We have over 200 members. So those are the manufacturers and the first importers within pesticide, fertilizer, seed, animal health, maple tubing in Quebec, the Ag Plastics. And this slide just kind of shows you a snapshot of some of those brand names that you may be familiar with who are members, but it's definitely not complete of all our members' logos. And operationally, so how these programs work is that we work with over 2,000 sites across the country. Those are either retail sites, those are municipal collection sites such as transfer sites or landfills, and that's where the product is actually brought by the user, by the farmer. And we even do on-farm pickup for large farms depending on the material. Almost 200,000 farms across Canada participating. And then we have 20 plus contractors and about 10 North American recyclers. So all of the stuff that we do manage actually stays in Canada or the US where it can. It's been a while since things have gone overseas. And where we can, they go to an end market, so new products. And then there's certain products that have secure or safe disposal, such as our obsolete or unwanted pesticide and animal, livestock, and fertilizer, or sorry, livestock and equine medication program, which I'll show in a moment. And so just a snapshot of what actually is used. You saw something similar to this in Jennifer's slide, but Canadian farmers use about 62,000 tons of ag plastics every year, which on a Canadian scale is only about 3.5% of all plastic waste in the country. But there's a lot of plastic that's used on farms. This is a bit of a breakdown of across Canada. So this is not an Alberta specific. This is what that percentage is by product category. And we currently collect about 16% of it, of what's put out there across all of our permanent programs. So not taking into account the pilot programs. And that number, you might say, like, why is that what it is? And it's pretty much because of EPR. So we operate our programs are mostly voluntary. So all these gray logos that you see, the little jug, that's our small container program, the drums and totes, seed, pesticide, inoculant bags, and then the onto products. Those are voluntarily run across the country in basically every province, and that is industry-led and funded. So there's no regulation. It's the industry that's coming together and done that. But then there's some of these other plastics like grain bags, twine, where you don't have the manufacturer that exists in that province. So regulation is the game changer. It actually provides the mechanism to have these plastics, the funding mechanism to be able to get them recycled. And so you can see in Alberta right now, we don't have any regulated programs for ag plastics. In Saskatchewan, there's grain bags. Manitoba, there's several more. And then Quebec has a very extensive program right now for EPR, which includes a lot of plastics. And then as well as PEI has some. And so the big question always, what are things turned into? So, and the whole process. So from that package, a small pesticide under 23-liter container, as well as the large drums and totes, they are prepared by the user, the farmer. They're, in the case of the small containers, we provide the collection bags. They put them in that. They bring them to a collection site. Same thing with the drums and totes. Our collection contractors pick them up and they send them for processing where it's cleaned, washed, shredded, and then that goes to an end market. So our end markets are things like drainage tile, agricultural fence posts, pallets, various things depending on the product. And we have a page on our website, which is What Becomes What, which so you can actually see every single product we collect and what it's turned into in the end, and where in Canada or in the US. In terms of our seed, pesticide, and inoculant bags, so they're small bags. Those are 50, the typically 50-pound bags, as well as larger super sacks, they're called, flexible IBCs. And so those are collected, brought back again to the retail location, processed into a shred, and then depending on the bag, they're either made into new materials such as lumber wrap, or sent for high temperature incineration at a cement kiln. And those are the harder to recycle smaller bags that are plastic mixed with paper. We also have this unwanted pesticide livestock equine medication program that runs across the country. And so it's open to pretty much anybody that has an agricultural or commercial crop input that has a PCP number on it. It's a free program. Anybody can participate, no cost. They bring it to the collection site. And then depending on, again, the material brought in. So these are very old products. I'll show some photos in a second, but the plastic and metals from it are recycled. The liquid and solid products are sent for a safe high temperature incineration disposal. And these are, like I say, really old stuff. So Furadan, which is a deregistered product. There's DDT in these barrels that were received in Ontario in this September. So these are just some highlights from 2025. This program operates on a 3-year rotation. So each area, it happens once every 3 years. So Northern Alberta and the Peace region of Alberta and BC was this October. There will be in Alberta, no program in the fall of 2026. And then in 2027, it will be Southern Alberta, followed by Northern Alberta, the gap year, Southern Northern. And it works like that throughout the country. Now, just to put in perspective of crop input collection, so we base our recovery targets based on a 3-year recovery, pretty much because just because a farmer may use a product this year doesn't mean that they bring it to a collection site next year. They may hold on to it till they have a larger volume. And so when you use a 3-year average, it gives you a better idea of what's actually being recycled. And our small container program is actually one of the most successful recycling programs in the world, where we have an 81% recycling recovery rate. So in 2024, that was 2.2 million kilos of plastic. And since inception, it's, almost 60 million kilograms of plastic that the program's recycled. Drums and totes, we're at about 62%. There's a lot of plastic being recycled. And then these bags and large tote bags, it's 33% and continually growing. That Western Canada was just onboarded as a program in the last several years. And in Eastern Canada, there was the addition of new bags. And so that number went down a little bit just with it takes time when you first introduce a program for collection volumes to start increasing or when you add new materials. And so what we can provide as well to our members, to the public, is what's the impacts. So, like I said, there's about 64, almost 63.5 million kilograms of container plastic. That's the small and the bulk containers, which, calculated out, it's a pretty big impact in CO2 equivalent emissions avoided when these plastics are being burnt or landfilled. And then we have these member reports for our member companies where we can actually show them as an actual member that's putting product into the market. This is, for the year, this is their impact of what has come back from their products. And then lastly, I mean, we're aiming for zero egg plastics to landfill and obviously to not be burnt on farm. And yeah. There's one thing I did want to add also. So thanks for this. I'll take questions later, but just to one of Jen's slides said that there's a $25 per ton compensation for a grain bag roller. That is if there's a permanent program that exists in Saskatchewan under the permanent program right now. So if there were a permanent program in Alberta, it would be harmonized and that would be available if a collection site were to have that. So it's just the material incentive right now for Alberta, but it's to illustrate that under a permit program, there'd be an even higher incentive. And the reason for that is if you have a grain bag roller and ratepayers are using it, you're going to have better rolls, heavier loads. The recyclers will be happier, which they'll speak to, I'm sure, in a moment during their presentations of quality and how it has to be prepared. But that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Davin. I'll ask Benson to start his presentation when he gets a chance.
All right, I think we're all ready to go here. I think we're pretty good. Thank you, everyone. My name is Benson Taud-Sanacone. I'm representing Curtis Environmental, based out of Regina, Saskatchewan today. And actually, the chats today were actually a really good segue into kind of what we wanted to chat about. Obviously, a lot of familiar faces here in the webinar, but we are a mechanical recycler based out of
Benson, sorry to interrupt. We don't see your slides. I'm not sure if you started sharing yet. You can just double check that you hit the share bottom of your window.
I thought I saw it. Didn't see that?
Yes.
Okay.
It's loading. Perfect. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh,
You're good
okay.
now.
Anyways, just wanted to, we only have a couple minutes today, but just wanted to chat about a project that we've been working on here for the last year. It's Canada's first recycling facility for super sacks and twine. So Davin's presentation was a good segue into that. Anyways, a little bit about Curtis. We've been established since 1951. We've been working with Clean Farms, particularly since 1989. So we've been partnered with them to drive circular economy solutions in Western Canada. So primarily we operate and run their small container program out of Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. And then we also run their bulk plastic program for agriculture plastics in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. So as part of this project, we've partnered with Hydrodyne, which is a European, Germany-based equipment manufacturer. And they operate in 10 commercial facilities and have global specialists and a team of 45, all dedicated to recycling plastic. So this facility that we're proposing is going to be targeting large plastic bulk containers, not only from agriculture, but also from food, construction, and healthcare sectors. The intent would be to produce high quality recycled polypropylene to be used in other packaging, other durable applications. And interesting to note, the project that we presented today was recently selected as to receive a grant from Emissions Reduction Alberta. So why does this matter? As global food demand increases, farmers are under increased pressure to reduce costs and shrink their environmental footprint. And one of the ways they do that is using polypropylene bulk bags. And these super sacks are woven. They're really designed to carry pretty large and agricultural loads like grain, seeds, fertilizers. And between 2000 and 2023, about 877 million kilos of FIBCs were imported into Canada. So, but while they're essential, they come with a significant cost. So if they don't not handled properly, they really sit in landfills and for centuries and potentially leak into waterways. So what our project is, so we have a site based in Bentley, Alberta, between here and Edmonton. The intent would be is produce 8,000 tons a year processing capacity. So it's a modular closed loop system. So the inputs would be FIBC super sacks, but also twine. As you saw in Davin's presentation, there's a lot of material out there in terms of twine that needs to be recycled. And right now, there's not really the infrastructure there to facilitate this type of recycling. So the output would be high purity flakes. And also, this project is based on similar projects that are carried in France and Australia. Long and short of it is, I'm getting near the end of this here, but the project will reduce about 12,000 tons of CO2 reduced a year at full capacity. And then really the avoid emissions will be coming from virgin polypropylene production. So the intent would be is to kind of commercially scale this to another project, probably in 2035 if we can make it commercially viable. And basically with this infrastructure in place, it's an energy efficient closed loop process which conserves water and avoids incineration, which that's where they currently go here right now. And with that, hopefully I stuck within my 5-minute time limit, but that's all I had there. So
You did great. Thanks, Benson. Really
okay,
interesting
thank you.
project, and we're excited to see this advance and the next few months to a year to see the facility in Bentley. So great, thank you. Daryl, you are up, and if you want to share your screen, that would be great.
There we go. Did I do it?
It is perfect. Thank you.
Hey. Good morning, everyone. My name is Daryl Walski with Merlin Plastics, VP of Sustainability. I'm going to give you a little background on Merlin, and then I'll get into some of the ag film, challenges and what we're currently doing. This is the Merlin group of companies, which I'll get into as we go on through the presentation. Merlin processes post-consumer and post-industrial plastic. Everything from PET, which is FDA, which goes back into food grade material, and such as the water bottles and clamshells. We have HDPE, which also is food grade. We do out of our Delta facility in BC. We take PP, LD, and also all the other hard to deal with plastics. So what we do is we normally take any plastic from businesses, curbside, depots, EPR programs. We bring it in, we sort it, and then we to our specifications, and then we put it in our processing to make resin, and then that resin is a commodity that is now sold worldwide. So here's an overview of sort of our facilities. Our main facility is in Delta, BC, Calgary, Bassano. New Westminster was our sorting plant, Revital out in Sarnia, Ontario. And we have 2 plants in the US that do PET in Turlock and in Warren. So grain bags. Grain bags, we've been doing grain bags for about over 10 years. We worked with Wheatland County to start the process years ago. We work with them to come up with the best way to handle them, to roll them, and then we started processing them to find the best way. So here are some of the examples of the grain bags that we get in. Here are ultimately the Oscar winners of grain bags. Very clean, very tight rolled, and as Davin said, that's great for us. It allows us to process the grain bags faster, which means more output. There's less cleaning of them, and it allows us to really concentrate on our resin, which then we're allowed to make a very good PCR resin that we can sell out to the world. So we've been involved with the pilot since day one, as Devin mentioned earlier. So here are some of the problems that we have in our in our grain bags. We over the years we've seen, as Davin said and Asher said, that these were being burnt or landfilled. Many people didn't think of them as a commodity. And so, over the years and the programs that have come up, we're realizing that they are a commodity and there's value to them. So we have seen everything from rocks, you can see there, dirt and mud and grain. We've seen rodents, animals, steel, you name it, has come in the rolls. And I think over the years that was challenging. So with the programs in place now, it's getting better and better uh, communication so that that is not being in the bales, and that we are able to take the good bales that I showed before. So, I mean, again, here you go. It comes into, like I said, these are old pictures, but I wanted to just give an update that that's still happening, not to this degree, but Clean Farms is working really hard to ensure that the collection sites get the rollers to teach them about the value of a grain bag, and we're not seeing less and less of this kind of material coming in. So yeah, I think, yeah. So sorry. And then another thing that has come up too is odor, right? Odor is a big problem. Odor can stay with the grain bag if it's not, depending on what was stored in it. So we always monitor that to make sure that there is no odor for any plastic that we get in, because that will sometimes stay with the resin. So we need to be aware of that. So here is some of the finished product that we would then sell that comes from the grain bag. So it's a good reminder that there is value in this product, and that we have sustainable markets currently. And for all the things that the group wants to look at, we can always take most things and recycle them. The problem is finding homes for them, that brand owners and people want to buy them. So for us, we know that the material is there to bring in. It's just working with brand owners on the other end to find homes for this material. So every load that we have gets tested in our lab in Delta, BC. A lot of our customers give us a range of what they're looking for, specifics of melt index or density, and we make sure that our product meets those specs and acts as good as virgin material, so that they can use the PCR back into their product. So just, this goes back to our whole, everyone's talking about the circular economy. We believe that it's very important to take this plastic that is out there that we can then make into a PCR, post-consumer resin, sorry, and that we can sell that to companies. And we work with brand owners to take their product, get it tested, to make sure that it's recyclable, so we can then recycle it and give it back to them. So I think, one thing that we're working with everyone is that, all these things, like I said, there's different items being proposed to bring on. We just want to work with the brand owners to be able to recycle that material and then also sell it back to them. So I think that's it. Ellie?
Thanks, Daryl. Appreciate that update. When you were talking about unwanted items in the recycle or that you get in the grain bags, I was thinking of our friends at Revolution that I think actually had a kitchen sink rolled into a grain bag when they unrolled it for processing. And that does not make the shredder happy. So thankfully
No,
that one was caught before it
yeah,
went into the shredder. Can
lots.
imagine it's an expensive one for Merlin for you guys to deal with if some metal gets caught up in that.
Yeah, we've seen some fence posts, like the metal fence posts that somehow get, mistakenly wrapped up, and if they're not caught, that steel and grinders don't make they don't like each other.
Yeah, for sure. So, definite lesson in terms of the communications work that the pilot and Clean Farms has done to really reiterate what can be recycled and what needs to not go into your grain bags. But thanks for that, Daryl. And now I'd like to welcome Dawn to come and present on an exciting project that we're really happy to hear about. Speaking of the brand owners and incorporation of recycled content, it's a great transition from the mention in Daryl's presentation over to Dawn and some of the great work that Mackenzie IBC has been doing.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tammy. I love the way that this webinar is set up because for those of you who are unawares, this is exactly how the value chain goes. You've got collection programs, processing groups like Merlin Plastic, and I'm here to share the perspective of those end markets. You heard from Daryl, you need to find a home for the material. Well, what we're doing is one of those homes. And so again, Don McKenzie, Mackenzie IBC. We've been the bulk agrochemical provider for most of Canadian agrochemical for about 32 years. So our clients are the Bayers, the BASFs, the Syngentas, and anything over about 55 liters all the way up to 1,300 liters is usually what we've provided over those 3 decades. So for us as an end market end user, a home for this material, the biggest question that we were asking ourselves, and Shane and I at Clean Farms have been working on this for almost 6 years, is can you take the packages on the left, which a lot of you on farm will have been familiar with, and rather than in a traditional recycling program where it's collection, repurposing, reprocessing, and then usually a bit of a down cycle. I'm not saying drainage tile isn't a fantastic application, but in our industry, it's that buzzword of closing the loop. How do we get something truly circular? And so for us, the biggest thing we tried to focus on is, Canada already has this great returnable model when it comes to these larger agrochemical containers. You've heard from Davin and Clean Farms. We have the collection programs in place. But could we actually create a generation two bulk package, not just from any recycled material, not the milk jugs from your municipality, but the actual agrochemical totes themselves? And I'm very proud to say that we've done it, but not without our series of challenges. As Daryl was speaking, I couldn't help but smile and smirk because while I haven't seen fence posts in the high density polyethylene or HDPE that we've processed. Some of these pictures are, indicative of that journey. Top left, you can see blue, white, black, and not all of those plastics are the same type. And without getting into plastic polymer science, when you have different plastics with different properties, with different melt flows, it's like you might have well have thrown in dirt and grass and metal. And so, a picture here on the right, that's a screen. So when plastic is processed, it goes through a screen before it's put through into new pellets. And you can kind of see there's a lot of what we call non-poly, non-plastic content, gravel, dirt, glass. And so what I really want to highlight is for those of us like myself representing those end markets, having the quality of the upstream value chain that you've heard of from Clean Farms and Merlin is absolutely critical. And I cannot say enough good things about the programs that we have here in Western Canada, the things that, Curtis Construction or Curtis Limited are going to be building in Alberta. We're already a world leader when it comes to sustainability in ag plastics, and we're building on that, which is amazing. So the picture in the bottom left, that white is the gold standard that we as a manufacturer then worked with Clean Farms to get to so that we could actually make a final product. So this is really cool for us too, is this is actually launching, we're building it right now. This is launching in 2026. We're very thankful to have BASF Crop Canada as the first major mover on this, where they're going to be launching their new herbicide portfolio in these new large, this is a 500-liter bulk herbicide tote. And the base is made from 100% recycled plastic, not just from, again, municipal sources, but from agrochemical totes, some of the more difficult forms of plastic out there. So, we're very proud of that because for a lot of you, when you buy your coffee, it'll come in a coffee arrangement, they say, made with 30% post-consumer plastic. Well, by weight, the base at 100% recycled content hits that 30-35% threshold. So Canada is really leading the way. It's the very first bulk package anywhere in the world that is made from the exact same plastic that made its predecessors. And so, Clean Farms has done a phenomenal job with their value chain to get us as a manufacturer, and we represent a company called Snyder Industries in the US, is to be able to take high quality inputs and make a high quality product in the end. So for those of you in ag, please look out for this new container in your ag retails going forward. And as we wrap up and try to instill a bit of momentum and confidence and excitement, and you're going to hear from Shane afterwards on what the future of all of this is we really hope that as a manufacturer doing it, putting it out in their market, commercializing it will drive other manufacturers to be as willing as we have been to leap through the Rubicon into recycled packaging, and then also applauding clients like BASF Crop Canada to encourage their colleagues in agrochemical to follow suit and really build on what already is an amazing Canadian sustainability story. So we should all be proud as Canadians, especially Western Canadians.
Thanks very much, Don. It's a great presentation and really exciting to hear about the transformation in your organization over the last 6 years, as you say. Lots of work and effort, so thank you for that. And please, just a reminder before we head in over to Shane for the last presentation, just to share any of your questions in the chat or using the Q&A function, and we'll be able to get to those as soon as Shane has done his presentation. Over to you.
Thanks, Tammy. You can see my slides okay?
All good.
Perfect. Excellent. Thanks so much. My name is Shane Henderson. I'm the director for Western Canada at Clean Farms. Work with all the great people on this panel today. I probably could have gone before Don McKenzie because his example is exactly what I want to talk about. But at this point, I'll kind of bring it a little bit more high level just to wrap everything up and kind of let everybody on the webinar know, where Clean Farms fits into this whole circular economy discussion and something that happens behind the scenes that most people don't fully recognize. So I'm the director for Western Canada, which means I work with folks like Davin and our team in the West to make sure all of our programs are operating effectively. But that's really only about 50% of what I do. The other 50% is actually managing all of our materials across Canada, everything that's collected, making sure it gets to its most sort of high-end application, generally the recycling side of things. When we talk about circular economy for Canadian agriculture and Clean Farms, we're unique, not the only one in the producer responsibility organization realm, but one of the only ones that actually maintain ownership of all the materials that we collect and are responsible for getting them to their end of life options. That's in some cases a blessing, and it's also a curse. And I just wanted to explain a little bit about the economics behind that, why that makes it difficult, and then what kind of we do as a producer responsibility organization to help bridge that gap. So if anybody follows the plastics recycling world, you'd know very well that we're in a really tough spot right now when it comes to recycled materials. You can't really open up a newspaper. Well, actually, nobody really opens up a newspaper. You can't look at a website these days about plastics news and not see sort of the dire consequences of what's happening right now. And it's all caused because there's a very low demand for recycled material. I see Daryl nodding his head over there. You know this very well. But, we're seeing very large recyclers in North America closing their doors just due to lack of demand for the recycled pellet. We heard it from Jen. We heard it from Daryl that we need people to buy this material and put it into a new product, or else recycling doesn't really work. It's not just a North American phenomenon. This is happening in Europe using very strong language, like, the recycling industry is facing imminent collapse if, demand doesn't kickstart again. And the low demand is prompted in part and by large part because of the low price of virgin plastic, the low price of oil and natural gas. So a lot of manufacturers making new products with with plastic, are turning away from recycled material because they can get, virgin plastic at the same or lower price. That is the curse of managing our materials at Clean Farms, is that we shoulder all of the risk of the plastic recycling industry when this happens. And just to illustrate for everybody on the call what this kind of looks like, this is a representation of what, colored high density polyethylene recycled material pricing index looks like. And you can see back in 2008, if anybody recalls a major event that might have happened in 2008, we saw demand completely drop. That was the economic crisis. Fairly stable over the next 12 years or so until another major event in 2020. If anybody recalls COVID, demand completely dropped off, forcing prices down. We did have a bit of a recovery after that when the economy opened back up again. But realistically, 2022, 2023, 24, and into where we are today in 2025, we're seeing historic low prices for recycled content. And that's really because of extremely low demand. So hopefully that illustrates kind of where we are today when it comes to, the overall demand for these materials and why it's so difficult to manage this plastic at the end of its life. But really, that's where Clean Farms comes in and our circular economy strategy. We have really put a severe focus on pursuing the circular economy for agriculture, really since about 5 or 6 years ago when we started having some of these particular challenges with recycled materials. And really the objective here, and the reason why Clean Farms has put a focus on this, is really to drive demand for PCR or recycled content in new products. And what the circular economy strategy really is using our unique position as a producer responsibility organization and connecting all of the different pieces of the value chain in order to generate demand for recycled material. So we identify circularity gaps with some of the materials that we collect, and we work with different stakeholders across the value chain, including folks like Daryl and Benson on the recycler side of things to deal with the mechanical recycling challenges. We work with folks like Don and other converters in this case being the folks who actually use raw material to make a new product, to work on R&D that might be necessary to address different technical challenges and design elements of these packages to make them more recyclable or to incorporate recycled content back into these containers where it may not have existed previously. And then as well with our member companies, these are the brand owners, these are the folks that buy the packages and buy the products that have recycled content. And really those are the folks that drive the demand. If I was buying a package from Don McKenzie, like BASF did, and said, I want you, Don, to make this product with 30% recycled content, that is demand creation. So we work with our members to try and find those opportunities and develop the business case for them to demand recycled content into their packages. And at the end of the day, the outcome of this whole circular economy strategy for Clean Farms is that we'd love all of our brand owners to look at recycled content as a viable option to put back into their packaging and products in some way, shape, or form. Ideally, it would be those packages that we collect and go right back into those same packages again. And then just to I guess sum up, this is a visual representation of what we talk about when we talk about the circular economy. I'll use the example of our small containers under 23-liter pesticide and fertilizer containers. This is a project that we've been undertaking for a few years now that's slowly coming to fruition. But what we've done is we've looked at these packages, these under 23-liter containers. There's about 10 million of them sold across Canada every year. And we've got a very robust collection system in place. When we look at the value chain, we have farmers who use the product on farm. We've got a robust collection system, as Davin mentioned, collecting around 80% of all of those containers that are sold into the market every year. We work with folks like Curtis Limited and Benson on the call on the pre-processing and sorting. They do size reduction. They do some pre-cleaning. We work with different recyclers who then can wash and pelletize the material. we work with bottle manufacturers who can take that pelletized material, turn it back into a new bottle, and make sure that it meets all the technical specifications that are required for a pesticide or fertilizer container. And then we also work with the brand owners to say, look, we can bring all the people to the table. We can make this happen, as long as you're willing to buy those containers at the end of the day and create that demand for the recycled plastic. So we're very proud to say that at this point, about 5 years later, we've completed all the technical trials and we're moving into the final phase of our bottle to bottle project. We've proven the economics, we've proven the technical specifications. That photo that you see in the bottom right is a photo I took actually just yesterday of a bottle that's been made with 30% recycled content from old containers that farmers in Canada have returned back through our collection programs. So we're hoping within the next 24 months, we will see farmers across Canada using containers made with the containers that they returned last year, completely closing that loop and driving some demand for that recycled material at the end of the day. And I must say, we can't do it ourselves. We sit in a very unique spot in the circular economy discussion, right smack dab in the middle, which is why we feel like we're very well positioned to bring everybody together and facilitate those discussions between the recyclers, the converters, and the brand owners in order to bring this to fruition. I'll leave it there, and Tammy, pass it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Shane. That's excellent and really great to see some of that work taking place within the industry and the brand owners to move to that bottle to bottle. And yeah, just really exciting on the demand side. So thanks for that. Yeah, just like to remind everyone about the questions in the chat, and we'll open it up now and kind of start some Q&A with the panel. So again, thank you to all our panelists for contributing your time today and your expertise. It was excellent presentations and overview for our audience. I think I wanted to start, I see most of the questions that have come in have already been answered. So thank you to our panelists for also being keen and being quick on the response aspect there. I see that Osser has asked a question, and his question is actually if anyone knows if there are any EPR regulations that set PCR content targets in addition to collection targets. I don't know if anyone that's maybe more familiar with some of the European or some of that EPR regulation, if they've been moving that way. I'll open up to the panel. Shane.
Sure. I could speak briefly. Generally, recycled content requirements are not coupled with EPR requirements or legislation. We are seeing in Canada right now, actually, EPR is legislated provincially. So each province will legislate on their own, but we do have the federal government who's looking to implement PCR targets for products. There's some harmonization in the United States where they're passing EPR at the same time as PCR requirements, but generally it's sort of two separate pieces of legislation from my understanding. But Daryl, I'm not sure if you know more, or Jennifer on that side of things.
Nope.
Yeah, what you said is what I know as well. But I would also just remind all of us that EPR is really about the packaging or the material that's being regulated as a whole. So a lot of the targets are about reducing it or not needing to make as much in the first place as well. So by having PCR regulations coupled with EPR would kind of go against some of the bigger principles, and that's why I think it's decoupled from that.
What I can say though is that PCR requirements, under the INC negotiations that have been happening for the last several years, there were two key things that everybody tended to agree on. Number one was the desire for extended producer responsibility legislation to help on the collection side of things, and the other one that was not, really fought against by any of the parties was the need for PCR mandates or recycled content requirements in packages. So from a global perspective, I think EPR and recycled content mandates are both generally approved by all stakeholders, and we're starting to see it roll out. Both of those things roll out across Canada, the US, Europe, other countries. So it's not a matter of if, in my opinion, it's a matter of when we will see recycled content legislation in Canada.
Yeah. If I can add to Shane, one of the things that we've found trying to sell a recycled content SKU is that we are hitting on a lot of concerns that a lot of these larger companies have, that regulations are coming in the next 3 to 4 years mandating. So it's better to get in a recycled content SKU now. So regulations come, and as everyone's panicking, you actually realize you're already compliant and they don't have to do these sweeping business changes, which can be very disruptive to their ability, especially in crop inputs, to get out in the appropriate timeline for our growing season.
And that's interesting too, Don and Shane. Curious a bit. I know, Don, you mentioned 6 years and some of the work that it's taken you guys to develop this. And then Shane, sorry if I missed it. I'm not sure if you mentioned a timeline in terms of the bottle to bottle project you've been working on, but it doesn't happen overnight. So you need a bit of a runway to get some of the R&D done. And I don't know if you guys can talk a bit about that.
Yeah, that's putting it simply, Tammy. We don't deal with Kool-Aid containers and milk jugs in our industry. There are some particularly challenging technical issues to overcome as well. I think I saw somebody in the Q&A mention cross-contamination issues, and we've actually been working internationally with a group from from Europe, the US, an industry group, to try and solve some of those challenges. So yeah, these things don't happen overnight, especially for our industry. And I don't think there's any other manufacturers from any other industry, but I'm sure Daryl can speak to some of his customers upstream about the technical challenges around, food contact PCR, or just getting the right quality of pellet that suits the applications. Blown film applications are particularly challenging. So yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. It's really challenging.
Yeah, Daryl, I don't know. Did you want to comment on that? You came off mute, so I wasn't sure if you had anything to add to that.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, Shane hit it out of the park. I mean, I think and Don, I mean, there's companies out there that are willing to push and require PCR. And there's other companies that we've talked to in North America that say, I'm not using PCR until the last possible moment if it's mandated, and I'm not going to change, right? So you have two different schools of thought on this, and that's just business, and that's how it's going to be. I mean, I just saw a question in the chat that low demand for recycled product. I mean, that Shane hit it perfectly in his presentation, that right now the to buy companies that we would sell rail cars full of PCR are now buying rail cars full of resin because it's so cheap. They're dumping it. I mean, I think it's 39 cents a pound US or something like that, or 40 cents a pound US, where you can buy brand new virgin resin. 2 or 3 years ago, it was almost $2, or it was it's dramatically decreased. So I think with the price and the not, and some companies not willing to use PCR, you've created just a perfect storm of low demand, and which is affecting everybody.
Don, you had your hand up. Was it a phantom hand or a
No, I saw Victor's question, and
Yeah.
Daryl already just touched on it with some of those pricings. Like even the commercialized project that we have launching with BASF, here in January. The delta, or the difference between a wide spec virgin and what it costs to compensate the clean farms and value chain upstream, process it, pelletize it, and make it into a product that maybe has a higher scrap rate or has an R&D expense related to it, it is more expensive. And unfortunately, we know that there's a value placed on being more sustainable, but a lot of these procurement departments at various downstream users say, oh, we want sustainability, but there has to be price parity with what we're currently buying. And it goes at odds a lot of the time with what they then publicly announce to the general public, that they are committed to sustainability. But I can, proudly say again, there's a lot of pride in Canadian agriculture. A lot of those companies are willing to see the value in what we're doing. And I think as that delta or price of virgin resin increases, our hopefully there's enough infrastructure still left over that we can take advantage of that revival. But right now, prices are so low that, well, why should I do it? Becomes the unfortunate question you have to answer more often than you'd like.
Davin, over to you.
I'm just going to add, so in that same question is it a price or performance concern? And from a collection standpoint, and just noting to the education that we have to provide to those who are actually bringing the product in, so the farmers, the users, it can sometimes be a performance concern in that, if the grain bags we collect are mixed with other plastics or other things, and then Merlin goes to process it, it changes the actual specification of the product. So if there's contamination, that's why we're so adamant and kind of strict on source separation. And that's why all recycling systems are that way, that plastic, isn't like, it's not all the same thing. Twine is a very, very specific type of plastic compared to a grain bag, compared to bale wrap in agriculture, and chemical jugs, and even the drums and totes. Don showed in his presentation that mixed flake of blue, black, white, those are all large drums or totes, but the actual chemical makeup of that plastic is very different. And so you mix it all together, you get a very specific use case. If you can source separate, as he said, and have all those specific blue types, and it's not just the color blue, but there's containers that are blue and others that are blue, and they're also different material grades. So that can be a concern, and so it's incredibly important to have the separation of the different product types.
Yeah, thanks for that update, Davin, and a good reminder for all of us too in terms of the quality piece and the actual commodity. And a lot of people ask us at APRA, can X material be recycled? And I say almost everything can be recycled. It's whether there's the actual business case and the ability technically to do it and to put the time and energy into it. So, it takes a lot of groups like the Merlins and Revolutions and Curtis Limiteds of the world also as recyclers to put the time and effort into creating that quality commodity that can then be put on the market. We appreciate all their work in the R&D space and working with us as part of that. So kind of transitioning a little bit just into, I don't want to, I'm not ignoring the questions in the chat. I just wanted to let everyone kind of finish on that one vein. The question here is there a need or demand for chemical recycling in the market as opposed to mechanical? So, and Davin, yeah, go ahead.
I can say just from the agricultural perspective, so mechanical is obviously it's less intensive, energy intensive and input intensive. It's quite expensive for chemical recycling, and there's not many, I don't know of any companies that are really successfully doing it economically. But from the materials that we collect, we always are asked about netting, net wrap. It's probably the most challenging plastic, Daryl would probably agree, to try and recycle from an agricultural plastics perspective. It's a thin filament and it gets bound up with a lot of organic matter. It would probably be a good option for chemical recycling if that existed and it was economically feasible. So there is a space for chemical recycling, but that also being said, what people define as chemical recycling, there are different terms for that, pyrolysis versus actually, that's a whole nother conversation, a whole nother, webinar, but just in that line of there is likely a place for it in ag plastics. And I see Shane will probably add to this.
Yeah, just that you nailed it, Davin. And all I wanted to add there is that there is definitely a place for chemical recycling in the recycling industry. It sometimes comes down to a matter of economics, and it as well comes down to commercialization. So we've talked to a lot of chemical recyclers. We're excited to see what's happening. We've signed an MOU with Aduro Clean Technologies to do some testing to see about commercialization. These things take a lot of time, and it's still a technology that's really, compared to mechanical recycling, in its infancy. So we're looking forward to seeing the advancement. It just doesn't happen overnight. Again, these things happen. We'll continue to work with them. But at the end of the day, I think it will come down to an economic decision. We need to make a input for the manufacturing process, and whether it's mechanical or chemical recycling, whoever can do it most economically, I think that's where the material is gonna go. So
Thank you. Yeah, that spelling is Aduro, so you had it right there, Kay Harding, on your question, but with an O at the end. And yeah, they have some really great info. And I saw Abe was on the call earlier. Not sure if he's still on, but yeah. So the next question is just, to what extent does or is EPR pushing back on the polymer primary producers? Example, IPL, which is Interpipeline themselves. And so maybe I can take a stab at that. I think we see all players in the value chain looking at how they can contribute to increasing recycled content. And so a lot of the resin manufacturers, at least the ones I can say that are members of APRA, are working on R&D. Nova actually just opened a film recycling facility in the US in early this year. I was going to say late last year, but I think it was early this year. I know a lot of our other members, IPL, have invested in research with Nate and the PRIA project, Plastic Research in Action. And Dow has also been doing a number of projects on net zero polyethylene production and other projects globally. So I think everyone sees it as the need to advance different solutions under the umbrella of EPR directly. EPR is usually just on the brand owners or the first sellers of that, so it doesn't go all the way back to the companies that are manufacturing the resin. But I think there's a lot of folks that are really trying to be part of the solution. I don't know if anybody else on the panel has anything to add to that. I'm also just going to post a link here for those of you that are more into the economics and pieces of the recycling chain. APRA actually did a webinar on the economics of plastics recycling earlier this year, and I'll just post the link to the YouTube video there. If you have some downtime on your Christmas break and you want some some YouTube time, welcome to do that. I wanted just to go over to Osser for a second, if we could. Osser, I don't know if you're still with us. I see your camera's off, but I think you're there. Thanks. Yeah, just curious if you can talk a little bit about, I guess, your perspective and how your perspective on recycling has changed as part of your work with the pilot, just as your own cow-calf operation and some of the changes you made or the things you've been doing within the recycling piece.
Yeah, I think it depends. Like my big plastic that I have an issue with was silage film, and I mean, luckily, because I think in part because of the pilot, and then the new plant that was built in Alberta, they actually will accept silage plastic to backfill their grain bags. It's kind of similar plastic, and because I live close to the plant, I bought one of those vertical on-farm compactors, and that's how I've dealt with all my stockpiled silage plastic. And I do that. I get about 3 bales a year, I guess, 2 to 3 bales a year that I can take and drop off when the plant, like when I have a full load. But not all the farmers in Alberta can do that, I guess, and that's why I think like there's a value in a permanent program, just to give the opportunity equally to all farmers, so you don't have to be geographically close to a recycling plant. And a lot of it is culture change. Like I do use a lot of bales for bale grazing, twine and net wrap both. I've been segregating it anyways, and when I take it off the bales, if it's clean, I put it into a recycling bag, and if it's dirty, like I try not to take more time because our time's all valuable. I just do what's easy, and so any twine I pull off bales that's clean, I put into recycling. If it's dirty, I still put it into a super sack that I take to our landfill, which is, they're accepting it now, but they're segregating it, which I think a lot of the landfills might be doing now, just to try to keep it out of their actual cells. They're kind of burying it or stockpiling it on site, which still has a large expense. And I guess what I tell farmers is, if you've never tried it, don't try to be perfect. Like I think just do what is easy for you. start there and see how much you'll actually collect, because you'll probably be surprised. I probably collect 3/4 of my twine without any extra work, and the stuff that is dirty, I don't bother trying to clean it because it can take a lot of time. So that's kind of my recommendation, is just try it. And a lot of it is culture change. Just doing something differently can be hard for farmers. And so, yeah, just give it a try and see from there.
Thanks, Oscar. Yeah, I really appreciate that input just on the collection side and for those that are joining that might be farmers or producers, and from our commodity organizations as well. It's helpful to have that perspective, and just the work that the pilot's done to hopefully get more people trying it and more of that quality increase and value increase as a result. Shane.
I just wanted to address, there was a question about, similar to what Oscar was talking about, the barrier and labor and time required, and whether farmers will continue to burn. And I just want to say, Oscar is an excellent example of what can be done in practice, but I'm not, sorry, Oscar, you're not the exception, is what I'm trying to say here. And we can prove that from our container collection program. With enough time, with enough education, farmers in Canada are some of the most environmentally conscious folks in the world, in my opinion. And the fact that we collect, we have an 81% 3-year rolling average for our small container program. I use that because it's kind of our largest program and the longest running. We've seen 1 year, single year collection rates, in the 90% range. There is no regulation on farmers to recycle these containers. There's no deposit. There's no incentive. They do it because they want to. They know they should. And it does take a little bit of extra time. But I think that proves that a lot of folks who say, oh, if it takes me extra time, I'm just going to burn it. We don't actually see that translating into reality. Our collection rates for some of our newer programs continue to increase over time. Our job as the producer responsibility organization is to design these programs to be as convenient and as accessible as possible, while being economically responsible, because at the end of the day, these programs do get paid for by industry and realistically by farmers at the end of the day. So anyway, I just wanted to address that yes, it does take a little bit of extra time, but the mentality of farmers in Canada, they understand the value of these programs. They want to do the right thing, and we try to meet them halfway. It may take a little bit of extra time, but we will do everything we can. On-farm pickups for large volume producers. We try to work with every municipality, every retailer that we can to make sure there's as many collection points as possible. At the end of the day, we're seeing really good results, and I think that's a testament to the farmers' value in these programs.
Thanks, Shane, and thanks for catching that question. I think it had come in right at the same time for me as another response, so I totally missed it. I didn't. If anyone else has posted a question that you felt has been missed or hasn't been answered yet, please go ahead and stick it in the chat. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Oscar, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Shane said. I think most farmers in Canada, we're very proud of being food producers, and we're very aware that that's what we're doing, and I think that's part of the story and why we're so aware of our environmental impact, and also because we're hoping the next generation is going to live here. We live on the land, and we don't like seeing all of the plastic in the ditches and left around, buried in the soil or burnt. So I just wanted to say, I do think farmers are particularly aware of the environmental impact of plastics.
Great. Thank you for that. Maybe just while we're waiting to see if there's any final questions that have come in, I will just open it up to the panelists. Are there any kind of final remarks or anything that any of you had wanted to make, or something that you thought of after you ended your presentation? You're like, darn, I really wanted to share that. Oh, Benson turns his camera off. He's like, nope, I'm not talking again.
Tammy, maybe I could just start. I don't have a whole lot more to add. I just want to say thanks for putting on the webinar. I think this really kind of shows the entire value chain of what we're doing. We always get bits and pieces of it. The other thing I wanted to mention too, and listening to what Oscar had to say, for any of the producers or folks that work in agriculture in this room, or really anybody, one of the things that Oscar was talking about is, hey, when you've got time, you do a good job. Other times, you may be a little bit too busy, and you may not be able to recycle 100% of all your plastic. And that is not the goal. Sustainability isn't a zero-sum game here. If you can divert 75% of your plastic, that is way better than diverting 0% of it. You may not be able to get 100%. But one of my favorite quotes is, we don't want to let perfection be the enemy of progress. And I think that rings true here, regardless of whether you're an urbanite or you're a rural farmer. It's about doing the best we can, but it's also making sure that the stuff that we do bring back and the effort that we put into it, let's make sure it's worthwhile. If you can't separate your plastic, just put it in the landfill. Try a different process next time that may be a little quicker, or wait until you've got some extra time to do it. It's not the end of the world. Like I said, recycling 75% of your material is better than recycling 0% of it. So I just wanted to leave that there for the audience, that we don't have to let perfection be the enemy of moving this along and progress.
Thanks for that reminder. Yeah, I think it's helpful to hear of the practical examples of things that have worked. And that's really, we've done other webinars and presentations over the course of APRG's history just to try to share best practices. I know Davin and Clean Farms have done a number of different YouTube how-to videos and best examples and all those things. So it's great just to see everyone working on this where they can and in your own spheres of influence. Looks like we have one more question. Where are these recycling initiatives in relation to rural northern producers? It's a limitation for things in the northern realm. Programs just don't have the logistics to meet the need at larger, less populated regions. And I don't know, Davin, if you wanted to take that one with some of the collection sites that we have in the more remote areas.
Yeah, so if you're speaking of like the Peace region of northern Alberta, we do actually have quite a few collection points up there, depending on the plastic or the product that's being collected. Again, trying to meet everyone's needs with a lot of, so if we're talking grain bags and twine in the pilot program phase, it's really relying on the municipalities and being able to have that space. So looking for transfer stations and landfills who will support the collection, just because these plastics are so big and bulky. And so what I would say, if there are specific areas where someone has identified a gap, where there's a need, if you're a specific producer up there, please reach out to me directly. And then also reach out to your counselors, Reeve, CAO, because ultimately they're the ones that say yes or no when I approach them to open another collection site. In terms of our permanent programs, I mean, we're at every retail location in the Peace region we've worked on. There's certain municipal sites that have stayed open. There was just a recent transition from small containers where they were collected at municipal sites, and they've been transitioned away to retail locations back to the point of purchase. And where there's lower density of retail operations, we actually have kept certain municipal sites open to add that to fill the gap, basically the geographic gap, so that no producer is really having to drive any more than 30-ish minutes to get 40 minutes to get to a collection site is ideal. So yeah, I mean, we're constantly working with all of our collection partners and others to try and fill those gaps. And then, as was in my presentation and Shane said as well, is we do offer for differing programs, and if there's volume there, on-farm pickup. And so that's something new this year that, or in the last couple of years, that has been growing and expanding for larger users. We can actually come directly to the farm. Grain bags is a great example. Throughout the province, we do on-farm pickup all the time because people have stockpiles of 60, 50, 70, 30 rolled grain bags. So, and yeah, reach out to me if there is a gap somewhere, and I will work on filling that gap so that there is equal distribution in our programs.
Awesome. Thanks, Davin. Well, I think that we're at our time for the presentations today. Again, thank you to our fabulous panel and to everyone who participated. We will be sharing the presentations and the video recording shortly. And yeah, just appreciate your support. Feel free to reach out at any time. And if you need to, I can always pass on. If you didn't catch people's emails and you're trying to reach someone, I'm happy to facilitate connections. And yeah, we appreciate you staying connected with us and just your interest in the work that we're doing. And we will endeavor to keep you updated on these different programs and projects into 2026. So happy holidays, happy New Year, and thank you very much, everyone.